this is Levi Wumpler with MMAStrengthandcoach.com. Today on the line we have Mark Hatmaker. He's the author of the best-selling series MMA Mastery, as well as a series called Boxing Mastery. He also has a self-defense book called No Second Chance. He's produced 40 instructional DVDs, and I believe Amazon says you have a new book coming out called The Boxer's Book of Conditioning and Drilling. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Awesome. How are you doing today?
I'm doing just fine, Levi. How about yourself?
I'm doing real good. Ready for this one. So first off, could you tell us how you got started with martial arts?
Well, boring story. It's, probably like most people, it's the odd combination of, this will date me here. I'm an old man now. I'm 46. Combination of watching the Bruce Lee movies when you're a kid and the odd happenstance of having a grandfather who had boxed and wrestled. Nothing professionally at all. He called it scuffling. He was a coal miner from Virginia, and this is more of a thing they did along the camps and around there, and he kind of was passed that along to whichever one of the my cousins. There were several of us running around there who were interested, and at that time it was just about 3 of us who decided to enjoy it. Out of that, only 2 of us stuck with it. It kind of grew from there.
Oh, that's great. And what started your interest with mixed martial arts and training?
Oh, actually, I think it's always been around. As you know, mixed martial arts at the turn of the last century was already in view. Where we had several times we had boxers would be going against grapplers, and vice versa. Then you had some of the American wrestlers going against some of the great judoka of the old days. And at the time, the matches were just called combination matches. So I think, having been first introduced to some stories from my grandfather, before it's just come down to be called mixed martial arts, I guess always had a huge interest in those sorts of mixed-up matches. I believe you can also think of some of the old stories of Gene LaBelle in the 60s doing some of those matches against other artists and such. So I guess just the match against styles, the conflict of styles, I think has always been interesting to me, probably to everyone.
Mm-hmm. That's great. As a trainer and a coach, can you tell me what you think is the best practice for mixed martial arts specifically for competition?
For mixed martial, conditioning first and foremost. I mean, almost any coach in the world. I mean, as you being a coach yourself, you well know this: fights are won in the gym, not in the ring, or they're won again in the ring, not in the cage. It's going to be conditioning is it. The more specific we can get, the better. We know there's got to be some crossover from some general preparedness, physical conditioning to make that transfer, but. That's primarily it. I mean, you can practice all the technique you want in the world, but if you don't have the conditioning base to back it up, it's just going to be all for naught. Then beyond that, it's just getting right down to the basics and not. We know one of the novice mistakes is to assume that, hey, look, I'm throwing a punch, I'm hitting the bag, or I'm just kicking the bag. You can't fool yourself to think that you're actually boxing or kickboxing or actually practicing Muay Thai. As you well know, there's a lot more science. Some people would call it art. I'm more comfortable with the word science than there is to just flinging your hands out there. A lot of people throw things that look like punches or look like kicks, but it may not necessarily be the real animal. Sure,
that's great. So what would you think is the biggest mistake? Like, would it be how you say that they're not really practicing the art and thinking about the strategy, they're just throwing hands?
That's probably it. There's some really great work in cognitive learning now called deliberate practice. Forgive me if you're already familiar with it, and I hate to bore everyone by going over it again. It's not so much the fact that doing constant repetition work is paying attention to every little step and detail along the way. It seems that there's not necessarily natural athletes or really natural talent in any given endeavor. It's the cognitive abilities or discipline that someone brings to the table. So sure, for example, we can have an athlete who says, I'm going to throw, 1,000 leg kicks against the banana bag every single day, and that's going to make me a master kicker. Well, it will definitely give you some conditioning, and it will there will be some improved facility in the kicking, but that's quite different from having someone, whether it's a coach or just someone who's really self-motivated, finding all the proper form, all the proper mechanics about throwing that individual kick. They might be able to reduce the workload from throwing that 1,000 kicks a day down to as many low as 500 or 250 a day, as long as they're having absolute mechanics. So it's not always just the sheer repetition. It's not just the practice. It's getting that practice as close to perfection as we can get, if that makes sense.
No, I think it does. Like you're saying, you need to have somebody that explains all the mechanics to you, and it's not just practice in general. It's perfect practice makes perfect.
Exactly. And perfect is as close as we can get into a chaotic sport, because as we know, I believe, if I got the quote right, I believe it's coming from Mike Tyson, everyone has a plan until you get punched in the face. So everyone's kick looks great, everyone's punches look great, and then we know this is just a chaotic sport, because your job is always to exert your will, but you got someone who's just as determined to exert their will. So no matter how perfect you are in the gym, that just is almost let an expletive slip. I mean, it doesn't mean anything when you actually get in there and fight.
Oh, sure, yeah. Now, in your book, No Holds Barred Fighting Savage Strikes, I believe it was in the beginning, I'm not sure exactly where in the book, you mentioned training for what happens when you miss your strike. Can you explain this concept to us a little bit?
Sure. Again, and I hate to bore. Like I said, I know all strikers out there know that when you actually compete, you miss way more than you hit. Whenever you are drilling, you get to hit 100% of the time, or worst case scenario, 99.99% of the time. When you're hitting the heavy bag, you know it's right there. That's the beauty of, for example, something like a double end bag that it can humble you a little bit until you start getting the rhythm down, and then it starts becoming a bit more predictable. When you're banging focus pads, usually we have, even if you've got a fairly good active focus pad coach, they're still putting the pads out there for you to get. But we do know that whenever you actually move into the match, we just talked about that competition of two individuals trying to exert their will. Just as you're trying to hit them, they're trying to hit you. They're trying not to be hit, and you're trying not to be hit. Even the best boxers, the best strikers, the best kickboxers, the best MMA fighters, they miss way more than they hit. So we feel a big part of accurate training or preparing for the chaos is to actually put miss training in. And some people might think that shadow boxing will take care of that. Well, no, that's a miss that you're prepared for. So what we like to do often is we have really active focus pad drills, in the sense that you may have prearranged strikes, prearranged combinations, or prearranged counter punching combinations. But when we start moving to intermediate level, we force the misses about at an 80-20 rule. 80% of the time you're going to be biting the pads, but there'll be just these random surprising misses and pullouts, because as you know, when you miss and when you really thought you were going to hit that heavy bag or really thought you're going to smack that pad, it can really pull you out of position. And if you get used to being able to recover, being pulled out of position in your drills, in your training in the gym, it should serve you much better when you actually get inside the ring of the cage.
That's great. That's great. So we really need to practice for our mistakes. Can you give us a little information about how maybe you'd set up one of your focus mid drills where the person's going to miss?
Yeah, exactly. Let's say we'll take a basic combination. Let's say we're going to go with a jab cross. We're going to have someone step outside and then throw perhaps a hook to the body. And then all along the way, we'll have our focus pad player. The feeder should be firing back occasionally to check for holes. So let's say we're going to run this as a 3-minute round. So jab, cross, step outside, pivot, bang to the body. Checking for holes the entire time. Just randomly in there, sometimes whenever we're feeding that jab cross, you might pull or deny them that cross. You'll feed the pad. You'll see the target as it comes in. Pull out a play, drop it out of position, and see if you can make them hit some sort of overreach, and then fire your own shot back at the ribs, or just make them see if they get too overextended and lose their good stancing, or sometimes when they move to the outside when they're throwing that hook to that body, you pivot along deeper to the inside and deny them that angle. And again, these should all be randomly. You never say ahead of time, hey, I'm going to make you miss right here. Your job as a good feeder is to try and figure out where it looks like your athlete's getting too grooved into the drill, because it's so easy to get into that tit for tat, pitter pat sort of thing. Like, I'm going to do this now, you do this. So that occasional chaos, that occasional miss, if it happens at the gym, we feel like you're going to be a lot better off when you get to the ring, where, as we said, you're going to miss more than you hit.
Oh yeah, that's great. That's great advice. Let's see here. would you say is your favorite training materials, equipment, books, DVDs, anything that you would want to recommend to subscribers?
Okay, subscribers. I mean, from our own repertoire or any just anything out there. If we're talking just a piece of training material, another human being. Gear is great, but having good training partner or partners is just, you got to have it, since it is a contact sport, a combat sport, and you have someone else in front of you or down on the mat with you. That's it. That's the way to go. Now, if you're talking about material that, I would have to do my, a mandatory sales pitch. If you're not already familiar with our material, I guess a good introduction, again, you can have a look at our book titles. Any of the book titles, they're fairly low price, to take a look at those. If you're not familiar with how some of our stuff works, I'd say the DVD called Down and Out. It's fairly low price, and it's a good introduction to the way we chain and move everything from any boxer or striker already knows that you should punches and bunches, put your strikes in combination, and usually every good grappler knows that you're supposed to be chaining your material on the ground. Down and Out shows you how we take and kind of push that idea to its limits, where we have complete chains that run from striking to shooting chains to ground chains, and we don't segment them. We make we put the mix where we can in the mixed martial arts. So I guess if you're not familiar with our work, Down and Out would be the one to take a look at to see if what we do is your cup of tea.
That sounds great. Now, where is that available?
You can take a look at our website at extremeselfprotection.com, and I think Paladin Press, I think it's paladin-press.com, I believe. It's also available there, but just as easily go to our site, extremeselfprotection.com. I think we've got a slightly bit lower point of purchase on it for that particular title.
Sure, it's great. Could you share with us some of the best advice your mentors have given you in the past?
It's always been about the work. It really has. Anyone that's ever really truly, from my grandfather to anyone you work with, it's just that work ethic. Someone who's willing to push, or is anyone who boxes or wrestles or rolls or does anything. Anyone who has put themselves in that grinder and pushed hard and still has a good attitude about it and gets up and does it again. That's it. It's just willing to do the work and keep going on. So I wish I had something more, esoteric or philosophical. I just say, no, it's all about the hard work, and that's it. I wish I could tell you something different, but that's not true.
No, that's great. It's the secret to success in just about anything. Work hard.
Amen to that. You got it.
That's been awesome. It's been great talking to you.
Well, pleasure here, my friend.
So this is Levi Wampler with MMAStrikingCoach.com. We were speaking with Mark Hatmaker. That website again is Extreme Self-Protection. Is it .com or .net?
It is .com, sir.
.com. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you, Mark.
My pleasure.